The narrative begins by showing an isolated village living under constant fear. In that community, a frightening legend circulated about a head-eater that inhabited the surroundings of the river. It was claimed that this creature pursued anyone who dared to approach, decapitated its victims, and then threw the headless bodies out of the waters. At first, it was seen as nothing more than a myth. However, gradually the victims began to appear. The villagers became terrified and no longer dared to go near the river. Any individual who got lost or went there recklessly was later found dead in a terrible state, without a head. Whenever someone from the village disappeared, the inhabitants immediately concluded that the demon was responsible. Until one day, this horror struck a young woman named Naga. Naga vanished without leaving any trace. Her sandals were located on the riverbank. However, her body was never found. The entire village resigned itself to the belief that Naga had been taken by the river demon. No one dared to look for her. Not even Liam, the village leader, showed concern. Still, one person refused to accept that version. It was Mohai, Naga's aunt. Mohai was convinced that her niece was still alive, or at least that there was a logical explanation for all those events. Since no villager was willing to help, Mohai requested professional assistance from the city, a private investigator named Detective KIEN. A few days later, KIEN arrived at the village. His reputation as a solver of complex cases was already widely known. Even so, the moment he set foot there, he immediately felt the aura of fear surrounding the inhabitants. KIEN promptly sought Mohai and learned that she was at the residence of the village chief. Upon arriving, KIEN witnessed an unpleasant scene. The chief refused to receive her, and his guards treated her with brutality. KIEN intervened immediately, restrained the guards, and removed Mohai from there. That encounter gave KIEN an early sign that something was wrong with the local authority. Mohai felt deep relief upon seeing KIEN. For her, he represented the only hope of finding her niece. The first step of the investigation began at Naga's house. There, KIEN met Fiu, the young woman's biological father. When asked about the last time he had seen his daughter, his answer was shocking. Instead of showing concern, he was cynical. He suspected that Naga had run away with another man, since the body had never been found. Upon hearing that accusation, Mohai became furious, but managed to control her emotions. Then she invited KIEN to examine Naga's bedroom. At first glance, the room seemed organized. However, KIEN's attentive eyes noticed something unusual. There were fragments of a flower vase scattered on the floor. Mohai explained that this was strange. Naga was a seamstress and did not have the habit of collecting vases, so where had those unknown pieces come from? KIEN asked whether any unusual incident had occurred recently. Mohai recalled a fact. Days earlier, a thief had broken into the house. Naga had surprised him and reacted, injuring the intruder's hand. However, since nothing had been taken, the case did not move forward. KIEN noted that information, an unsuccessful thief, mysterious vase fragments, and an indifferent father. It clearly was not a common disappearance. Since the clues in the residence led to no conclusion, KIEN decided to go to the main location of the event, the forest near the river where Naga had disappeared. At the spot where the sandals were found, KIEN discovered concrete evidence, a seed of an unusual plant. He took the seed to the village shaman for identification. The shaman explained that it was a seed with intoxicating or anesthetic effects. However, he also issued a severe warning. If KIEN believed that Naga had been taken by humans, he was deeply mistaken. The entire village knew that it was the work of the head-eater, and soon the body would certainly appear. Thinking rationally, KIEN felt that something was being concealed in that village. As he left the shaman's house, he realized that Mohai had followed him in secret. Mohai shared how special Naga was to her. The girl's mother had fled when she was still a child, leaving her behind, and her father Fiu had never truly recognized Naga as his daughter. Only Mohai had raised her with love and dedication. However, Mohai's husband did not accept that she cared for her niece and threatened divorce if she continued to focus on her. For that reason, Mohai was forced to distance herself from Naga. The years passed, and Mohai ended up separating from her husband, returning to the village to repair her mistakes with her niece. However, just a few days after the reunion, Naga mysteriously disappeared. Mohai was consumed by guilt, thinking that if she had never left, perhaps Naga would be safe. Upon realizing Mohai's sincerity and remorse, KIEN ended up allowing her to participate in the investigation. Night fell. The fear of the head eater turned the village into a scene of pure terror. All the villagers firmly locked their doors and hung protective talismans provided by the shaman in front of their houses. No one dared to go out that night. KIEN, staying in the village, also felt the oppressive atmosphere. However, when exhaustion finally led him to sleep, horror invaded his subconscious. KIEN dreamed that he was at the riverbank. There, he saw Nega's severed head floating in the water. In a frightening way, the eyes remained open and the mouth moved, asking for help. KIEN woke up startled, gasping, with cold sweat running down his body. He did not know whether that had been just a common nightmare or a sign sent by Nega's restless spirit. When the sun rose, KIEN wasted no time. Alongside Mohai, he walked through the village again in search of new clues. They obtained disturbing information. On the day of the disappearance, Nega had been seen arguing intensely with Tuet, the village chief's daughter. KIEN and Mohai immediately went to the chief's house to interrogate Tuet. When questioned, Tuet stated that the argument had occurred over a trivial reason. She said that Nega had made the fabric in the wrong color for her order. Tuet refused to pay, and an irritated Nega threatened to collect the debt from Tuet's fiancé, a man named Tak. Thus, it was quite likely that, after the disagreement, Nega had gone to look for Tak. KIEN quickly investigated who Tak was and discovered that he worked as a ceramic artisan, producing vases and plates. That detail immediately made KIEN remember the strange vase fragments found in Nega's bedroom. It was very likely that the flower vase had been made by Tak. Suspicion fell heavily upon him. KIEN and Mohai went to Tak's house, but the place was empty and frighteningly silent. Noticing Mohai's fear, KIEN asked her to wait outside while he entered the dark workshop alone. Inside, KIEN suddenly saw the figure of the head eater attacking Nega, but the vision disappeared at the same instant. Upon hearing a noise behind the workshop, he ran there and finally found Tak. Without hesitation, KIEN accused him of being involved in Nega's disappearance and questioned what his relationship with her was. Cornered, Tak ended up revealing his secret. He admitted that he loved Nega and intended to break off the engagement with Tuet to marry her. However, their relationship had been prevented by disapproval and threats. Tak stated that when the village chief and his family discovered the romance, they threatened to destroy both his life and Nega's if he dared to break the engagement. Upon hearing that confession, KIEN and Mohai concluded that the chief's family could be the true responsible for Nega's disappearance to preserve honor. They returned to the village chief's residence, where Liam, his wife Vihang, and daughter Tuet were interrogated. They admitted they were angry with Tak, but denied having done any harm to Nega. Instead, Tuet revealed a new shocking fact. She declared that Tak was a liar. He did not want to marry Nega for love, but out of fear. Tak tried to abandon Nega when he discovered she was pregnant with his child. That revelation completely changed the course of the case. Nega was pregnant with Tak's child. The motive for crime became extremely strong for everyone involved. First, Tak could have killed Nega to eliminate proof of the relationship and the unwanted pregnancy, in order to still marry the rich daughter of the village chief. Second, the chief's family could have ended Nega's life to protect their honor, preventing their daughter's engagement from being ruined by scandal. However, everything was still based only on assumptions, without concrete evidence. KIEN then remembered a previously ignored clue: the thief. Days before Nega's disappearance, her house had been invaded by a thief who strangely took nothing but confronted Nega, injuring his own hand. KIEN formulated a hypothesis. It was possible that Tak had sent the thief to recover an object he had given to Nega, the vase he had made, to prevent the relationship from being exposed. Or perhaps the chief's family had hired an assassin disguised as a thief to eliminate Nega. However, the plan failed because Nega reacted. Whoever the mastermind was, the key to the truth lay with one person: the thief with the injured hand. If KIEN could find him, the case would be solved. KIEN and Mohai then had the mission of locating the thief. Since the decisive clue was the hand injury, KIEN devised a strategy to examine the suspect's hands. The search finally yielded results when they found a man named Tong, a repeat offender who had been exiled by the village chief to live outside the boundaries due to frequent thefts. When examined, Tong had a recent injury on his hand. Under interrogation conducted by KIEN, Tong eventually gave in and admitted that he had broken into Naga's residence that night. The police even found Naga's bracelet in his hut as evidence. However, when questioned about who had paid him to kill Naga, Tong firmly denied it. He claimed that no one had given him orders and that he had acted solely out of financial need. Still, he presented much more relevant information. He declared that on the night he fled from Naga's house, he witnessed something disturbing. He saw the village chief's wife, Vihin, and Naga's father, Piha, together in secret. It was discovered that Piha and Vinhang had been having an affair for years, and that on that same night, Naga had caught her own father cheating with Vinhang. KIEN's suspicion then turned to Vinhang, the village leader's wife. He began to consider her the mastermind behind the events. However, when confronted, Vinhang refused to confess and defended herself. She admitted that she met Naga that night, but only to threaten her. Vinhang declared that she warned Naga that she would kill her if she did not stay away from Tak, her daughter's fiancé. KIEN and Mohai continued searching for other witnesses. It was discovered that there was a person who had seen Naga meeting Tuet in the forest. KIEN immediately confronted Tuet and pressured her with the evidence gathered. Feeling cornered, Tuet finally confessed. She explained that they met in the forest and argued intensely because she was dominated by jealousy upon learning that Naga was pregnant with her fiancé's child. They pushed each other, and during the struggle, Tuet grabbed a stone and struck the young woman on the head, forcing her to lose consciousness. Tuet saw Naga fallen and motionless, believing she was dead. Taken by panic and terror, she fled and left the body there. She swore that she never moved it. The case seemed solved. KIEN immediately contacted the city police. Shortly after, the officers arrived and arrested Tuet on charges of homicide and negligent manslaughter. Mohai cried uncontrollably when faced with that reality. However, doubts still troubled KIEN about the disappearance of the bodies. Even with the main suspect arrested, the mystery of Naga's body's disappearance remained enormous and unsolved. That night, after the turmoil of the arrest subsided, KIEN tried to rest. He was dining alone at the lodging, believing his task had finally come to an end. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed abruptly. KIEN felt the presence of someone or something entering the room. When he turned around, he came face to face with the head-eater demon. In an even more terrifying way, the creature was holding Naga's severed head and devouring it fiercely before his eyes. That was not a dream. He screamed when the entity lunged toward him. Fortunately, officers who were nearby heard the scream and broke down the door, saving KIEN. Strangely, the moment they entered, the demon disappeared without leaving a trace. The episode convinced KIEN that there was a real supernatural element at work, not mere hallucinations or fabricated legends. KIEN ordered his colleagues to investigate the origin of the demon, the reason for its existence and its true identity. They consulted the old records of the village and discovered a frightening historical fact. 30 years earlier, a bloody tragedy had occurred in that place. A large family of 14 people had been accused of betraying the village. Without any fair trial, the villagers took justice into their own hands, dragged them all to the riverbank, and decapitated them one by one. It was believed that the tormented spirits of the massacred family merged into a single entity, giving rise to the head-eater. The river came to be considered cursed as the site of the collective execution. However, there was a strange detail. The legend had existed for 3 decades, but the murders and reports about the demon only became violently frequent in the last 5 to 10 years. The question then arose, why had it remained inactive for 20 years before awakening now? And why did the demon seem directed at KIEN? KIEN found himself divided between reason and mysticism. On one hand, his logical mind denied the existence of ghosts. On the other, his own eyes had already seen the demon more than once. While he struggled against his own sanity, despair took over the house of the village chief. Vinhang, the leader's wife, was in total distress. She begged her husband Liam for help, but he refused to get further involved. At that moment, Vinhang's personal servant brought alarming news. The man she had paid to kill Naga had not carried out the task. It was then revealed that Vinhang was the true mastermind of the entire conspiracy. Briefly returning to the past, when Tuat, Vinhang's daughter, gravely injured Naga in the forest, causing her to lose consciousness, Tuat fled in terror. Coincidentally, Vinhang's servant witnessed what happened and informed his mistress. Instead of helping Naga, Vinhang saw there the perfect opportunity to eliminate her once and for all. To preserve her daughter's reputation, she gave money to the servant to hire an assassin, and the chosen one was Tong, the thief previously captured. However, Tong was cunning and opportunistic. Upon finding Naga unconscious in the forest, he devised a cruel plan. Instead of killing her as Vinhang had ordered, he kept Naga hidden in captivity. His intention was to repeatedly blackmail the village chief's wife. With that plan, he could extort large sums. All clues pointed back to Tong. KIEN and Mohai decided to follow him in secret. It was discovered that Tong was again blackmailing Vinhang. He threatened that if he did not receive more money, he would bring Naga, still alive, before the villagers and reveal Vinhang's dishonor. The clandestine meeting took place in the forest between Vinhang, the servant, and Tong. Tension rose. Tong realized that the servant intended to betray him. Thus, he killed the servant on the spot. Cornered, Vinhang began to beg Tong to hand over Naga so she could kill her with her own hands. In exchange, she offered all the remaining money. Tong accepted, and both went to the hiding place where Naga remained imprisoned. At the moment when Vinhang was about to kill Naga, KIEN and Mohai appeared. An intense confrontation began. KIEN faced Tong alone, and using his skills, killed him by impaling him on a stake in a tree. Meanwhile, Mohai managed to remove Naga from Vinhang's hands and tied her to a tree with the help of the young Naga. The next day, all the dark secrets were revealed. Vinhang ended up arrested by the police for attempted homicide. Tok broke off the engagement with Tuat and reunited with Naga and the child who was still to be born. The village regained calm. Still, for KIEN, the case was not completely closed. A great question continued to disturb him. Who or what was the demon he insisted on seeing? While Mohai accompanied KIEN on the return, she made a statement that would become decisive. She explained that she had never seen the creature that KIEN claimed to see. Even so, it was believed that all the villagers had ingested the protective potion offered by the shaman to ward off the demon. Concerned about KIEN's condition, Mohai admitted that she had secretly mixed the potion into his food every night. However, she herself had never drunk the supposed protective substance. The confession deeply shook KIEN. He decided to examine the remainder of the potion. That was when the disturbing truth came to light. The liquid offered no protection at all, but was a powerful hallucinogenic drug produced from the seeds found earlier. During all that time, there had been no demon terrorizing the village. The reason the villagers saw the head eater and lived dominated by fear was not supernatural, but the consequence of collective poisoning. The true responsible for everything was the shaman. Another question arose. Why had he done that? Driven by the need to understand, KIEN delved into the village's history and discovered an essential detail that had been omitted. The family of 14 people decapitated 30 years earlier was actually composed of 15 members. One child survived. She hid and watched her own family be decapitated by the villagers at the riverbank. On that day, she swore revenge. She left to learn about poisons and years later returned to the village disguised as a shaman. Her plan was cunning and cruel. She used her mixtures to induce hallucinations in the villagers, making them see the head eater. Under the effect of fear and substances, she managed to manipulate them completely. Through that method, she could eliminate her enemies one by one, decapitating them in the same way they had done to her family. Naturally, the villagers believed the deaths were caused by supernatural forces. In reality, the demon had never existed. Everything was part of the shaman's revenge. KIEN and the police raided the shaman's hut, but it was too late. The place was abandoned. The shaman, the true serial killer, had fled. The story ends with KIEN in silence, understanding that the terror that plagued the village was not the result of a supernatural creature, but of a man who had nurtured revenge for decades.